No. The article in your, of course, Ambedkar and Gandhi, we just discussed 2 points. I'm asking, did you read that article by Bhikkhu Parekh, which I sent in the Telegram group? Nahi padha. How Gandhi would react to contemporary India. Yes. So the thing is, there is a contemporary relevance which I was talking about. And I shall start with the same thing today. The next thinker, I have some more chapters on Gandhi. A compilation from IGNOU MA, which is really worth reading. So I have it with me. I'll today send that also in the group. Yeah, I'll send that also in the group. And also something on Ambedkar. But before we proceed with this science part, before we proceed with Ambedkar. Now, Ambedkar, when you will study freedom movement in history books, there is not much contribution that is attributed to Ambedkar for freedom struggle. In fact, when the Congress government fell in the provinces, did I discuss this with you that Congress formed ministries in some provinces, and there what happened was that without the permission of Congress, you can hear me and you can see me properly. No need for me to use this. आवाज अच्छे से आ रही है ना आप सब तक? So what I was telling that when Congress formed government in certain provinces after winning the provincial assembly elections, that is the provinces elections, but without the consultation of Congress or without consulting any of the provincial government, Britishers took India into the Second World War. Okay, India was already participating in the Second World War without even consultation of Congress, which was representing the Indians. So Congress said that you have not even deemed fit to consult us. We will resign in protest. And they resigned from the 8 provinces where they were having government. Jinnah celebrated it, Ambedkar celebrated it. Okay, so Ambedkar was very much against Congress. So first we shall start with the differentiation aspect. Okay, what are the views of Gandhi and Ambedkar on a range of issues? Yesterday I made a table and we were noting these things. I hope you all remember. Anyone who is a new student having first class here? I guess all of you are familiar to me, right? No one who is having first class today, right? I don't think. Most of the names I know. So let us start with that presentation form, right? Okay, so now I'll give you sufficient time to note down things because today, not through PPT, today we'll see it through pen and paper on slide itself, because here flowcharts will be very handy because we will be comparing these two thinkers very often. Gandhi. Now, the first thing that we saw yesterday was that Gandhi and Ambedkar regarding the Panchayat. Panchayat one you have already seen that what was their respective stand on Panchayats, how they have differed with each other when it comes to Panchayat. What would Gandhi say? Gandhi would say that no, Panchayat should be there. Panchayat must be there, right? He would say that Panchayats are needed. Panchayats are good thing. But what would he say? Ambedkar would say that no, Panchayat should be done away with. They are not good thing. Why? Because Panchayat has what is called the caste hierarchy. Okay, rigid caste hierarchies where people are exploited. Yes, very good. People are exploited. The dominant caste kind of dominates and suppresses and subjugates. Right. This is what Ambedkar would say. So just this point. Which 2 points you wrote? One caste and the other one. Sorry, Panchayat and the other one was. I think we wrote 2 points. Yeah, Varna system. What was Varna system? Anyone remembers? Gandhi will favor Varna system, and Ambedkar will say annihilation of caste, doing away the Varna system. Why? If you remember, no. Why was Gandhi in favor of maintaining Varna system? Anyone who remembers? No, because Gandhi would say that it will lead to what kind of specialization? Someone who has been doing this thing for a long time. So carpenter was carpenter. His father was a carpenter. His grandfather, his great grandfather was a carpenter. So he specialized in carpentry. So that expertise will be gone. Okay, if Varna system is undone, because all these jatis, in Vedic literature, you do not come across jati. Of course, you come across Varna. And later on, these Varnas became Jati themselves. So today we have the caste. Caste are known by their profession. Dhobi is a caste, Badai is a caste, Sunar is a caste, Lohar is a caste. I mean, they were professions, but because they were hereditary in nature, these professions were hereditary in nature. They were carried on for from generation to generation. That is how it developed into a caste. Yes, you understand the why so many castes and subcastes are found in Hinduism, because all these professions in due course of time turn into what? Caste. Is it all right? Now there are certain similarities also, but first of all we will see the dissimilarities and then we will come to the similarity part. So let us start now. So Varna and caste we have already done. So let us now come to Gandhi would criticize industries based on machines. Okay, he's very critical. He would say that it dehumanizes an individual, it kills the essence of humanity. These all things he would say, right? But Ambedkar would favor that. Is there any picture of Ambedkar that you have seen where you have seen in him without suit? Have you? What Ambedkar favored? Which one are you saying? What did Ambedkar favor? What are you asking? Aditya Shashank Chinta. Industrial Revolution? No, no. Industrial Revolution is gone. 16th century. We are in 19th century now. Because it brings prosperity, Ambedkar would say. Brings prosperity. It kills caste-based rigidities. See, in the hinterlands, try to understand this. In the hinterlands, the caste-based rigidities are today very strong. Okay, in the villages. Like if you are, suppose someone is a cobbler, but the next generation does not want to become a cobbler. They are maybe interested into anything, music. In village, they will be criticized if they start singing. Same happens to any other profession. Someone who is a washerman, but the next generation is not interested in becoming the washerman. They want to be maybe a chef. They want to go for hotel management. But the moment they start saying this thing in their village that I want to become a chef, I want to cook foods, they will be criticized that you are a washerman. Why do you want to do this? That's not your work. You should do what your father or grandfather, great grandfather has done. You have a good shop. You have a good income. What you want is not immaterial. What you are supposed, you should just fit into that watertight compartment. Correct. Once the person comes to the town, to the cities, these rigidities start becoming dilute. No one cares here. Okay, no one actually cares because they are so much involved into all other things that they do not care. Right? Which resistance to change, Sam? And on whose behalf? On Gandhi's or Ambedkar's? Of course, on Gandhi's behalf, you are asking it. See, yes, it is a resistance to change because people are very comfortable doing what they are doing for a very long time. So once industrialization happens, when industrial towns develop, there is a new role for everyone. Okay, there is a role. There is so much work in industrial towns that there is a new role for everyone. So that brings prosperity. Yes. So even a cobbler's son can work in an industry by learning the new skills that are needed in the industries. He need not pick up his father's skill, which he does not like for whatever reasons. So industries would bring prosperity. They would offer opportunity irrespective of your background. If you know a particular skill, if you are good at it, you will be recognized, you will be finding your rightful place under an industrial setup. That's why Ambedkar favors it. All right, let us write the next point then. You can ask your questions after I am done with this. Let me first make this. For Gandhi, religion is between man and God. For Ambedkar, it is between man and man. This is how you treat your fellow citizen. Your fellow human is what your religion should be focusing on. Not that there is some deity and I should please them. The transcendental part of religion, Ambedkar says that is not very important because this worldly aspect is more important. Okay, so he says your religion must teach you how to treat the fellow individual. Correct. Of course, Ambedkar believes in religion. He's not an atheist. Come on, communist थोड़ी है. He is critical of Hinduism. He said, I was born Hindu, I will not die a Hindu. He converted to Buddhism. Now you see one more thing. Varna, you have already done. Ambedkar would denounce the Vedas. But Gandhi would believe in Vedas. In fact, most of his spirituality comes from the Vedas. Gita is called the fifth Veda. Hope you know it. And of course, the other four Vedas, Gandhi believed in them. And he was very fond of them. Now here you should see, you have seen this yesterday itself, Ambedkar would not say. Religion and politics for Ambedkar is separate. Like Machiavelli, like any other realist. Okay. Means are more important than ends. For Ambedkar, means would justify the end. So you write here, means can justify the end. It's dehumanizing. Mechanization, even he would not like machines to be used, tractors or tube wells to be used for agriculture. Mechanization will dehumanize. He is apprehensive of that. Ambedkar is not. He would say that there are evil effects of mechanization, Ambedkar would say, but it is because of wrong social organization, not because mechanization itself is a bad thing. You all know that Satyagraha. Now Ambedkar will be critical. There is this famous speech given by Ambedkar, the grammar of anarchy. He calls Satyagraha and these peaceful dharna pradarshan as anarchy. He said and he says that we don't need to do these things when India is free. You were fighting British, that's all right. Now that the government has been formed, why are you? No, that is for post-independence part. He was saying this in Constituent Assembly. He was extremely critical of Gandhian method of protest. After India is free, he said, do not take kind of inspiration from Gandhi now. If a law is being made by the parliament, then it is the Supreme Court where it will be challenged, not by protesting on roads. Okay, he was a jurist. Written all of you? One last point. Or you can write it. Just one point you can write. I dictate it. Just one point on both sides. On Gandhi side, you write believes in morality. Believes in morality and supports ethics and conscience to end the evil. Okay. Now come to Ambedkar. Right. Ambedkar believes in legal constitutional methods. Ambedkar believes in legal and constitutional methods. Okay, all of you? Means would justify the end is the same thing which Krishnaji did in Mahabharata. You are fighting a righteous war. You need to win that war. How you win that war is secondary. So you are fighting the British, then don't take such moral high grounds that I'll not take support from Hitler and Tuzo and Mussolini. All right. Achita, is it all right? You are fighting for a just cause. Then go ahead. You are fighting the adharmis. Use all the adharma to win the war, is what Krishnaji says. Gandhi does not say that. Gandhi's Gita is more ethical than the author of the Gita. Right now, this is how these two stalwarts have differed with each other. And both of them, I told you, are revered. Use them to criticize them. Use an Ambedkar to criticize Gandhi. Use a Gandhi to criticize an Ambedkar. You don't take the risk on yourself. Okay. So according to Ambedkar, Ambedkar, this is how we will play safe in our exam. You quote an Ambedkar on Gandhi, no one will object. You do the same, everyone will object. Are you understanding the pragmatic approach that I am telling you? And he did so. Again, that's a hypothetical question. There can only be subjectivity in your question, Aditya. Even if I answer it with all my understanding of Indian history, or even if we read more and get all the other perspectives, then also there cannot be a one correct answer, which did not happen. That is hypothetical. And of course, my answer will be according to my bias. Your answer will be according to your bias. So that is open to interpretation, right? This is how they differ from each other. Now let us try to understand Ambedkar more. We have just seen where he differs from Gandhiji. Now change the para and write something. I want you to write. Have you heard his name? Mr. Arun Shourie, another prolific writer. He was disinvestment minister when Vajpayee was prime minister. A very senior BJP leader who has now been shunted. He has gone to Margdarshak Mandal. So he has become very critical of Narendra Modi right now in BJP. He and Yashwant Sinha. Okay. So he is one of the most prolific, like there are few, highly qualified intellectuals on the right-wing side. He is one of them. Of course, for the last 4 years, he's been critical, but all his life, he has written such wonderful books. One such book is Worshipping False God, and there he has called Ambedkar anti-national. He was beaten for this. He was manhandled for this. Okay. His book, Eminent Historian, again, there cannot be such point-to-point rebuttal of leftists. That how the likes of leftist historians have misconstructed the Indian history. Read that, Eminent Historian by Arun Shourie. And there are many such books. Okay, so Worshipping False God. Arun Shourie in his book Worshipping False God called Ambedkar anti-national. Because number one, Ambedkar's approach to the freedom movement. Okay, what he did says, it's a big community of segmented, fragmented, divided communities It is not a nation. Write this written. Ambedkar, in the same point you continue. See, I'll use pen and flowcharts if and where needed to explain things. Rest, you can copy things. Okay, will that be all right for today? I think it should be. We'll come to Maoist also. First, let us see them. Yes, Maoist. Maoist have gone to another extreme, even more than this. Okay, Ambedkar asked Dalits not to support freedom movement. It's not a nation the way it has been constructed. Okay, we'll again discuss this first, you write. He asked Dalits not to support freedom movement led by Congress. He criticized Quit India movement. I'll tell you everything. Please, can you write now? You write, then we'll discuss. Who is saying all these things? Arun Shourie in his book. Also, of course, he's referring to first-hand information. There is nothing wrong in what he's saying. All these are plain truths. Okay. Ambedkar also supported Jinnah's demand for Pakistan. Jinnah's support for Pakistan. Shourie writes that Ambedkar collaborated with the British as he was a part of Viceroy's Executive Council. Ambedkar was a member of Viceroy's Executive Council. Okay, as he was a part of Viceroy's Executive Council. Written, all of you. Now your questions. All of you are very curious. Why is Ambedkar doing this? So where should I start from? The first point. Big community of segmented communities? Yes, he was in favor of separate electorates for Dalit. Before that, Pune, you know about the Pune resolution? Okay, I'm telling it. Now wait. Now all your questions will be answered. India is a big community of segmented communities. See, today also, after that Hathras rape in UP, I read a poem on Facebook where a girl, a Wok, he has been very critical. She has used choicest of abuses, words that I cannot speak in class, and she has blamed Manusmriti. So a rapist who happens to be from a particular caste, I'll come to it, has read Manusmriti, is what the idiotic assumption here is. Now again, Manusmriti, we have already discussed Manusmriti. Yes, some parts are very critical about women. Ambedkar said, put a dynamite to these texts and burn them. Please try to understand that these texts were written thousands of years ago, compiled thousands of years ago, composed after that, and then contaminated by several intrusions and invasions. Britishers compiled them properly. Britishers kind of collected them properly, but the translations that the Britishers have done is a crap. Okay, there have been many historians who were on the British payroll and they translated absolute crap. So Ambedkar's impression of Vedas and Manusmriti is based on that translation, which is faulty. If he says put dynamite to these things, he's saying it because it's absolutely outrageous. Okay, so the correct translation was not done at all. Still, we need a lot of effort. Very few people and very few authentic copies are being circulated right now of all these religious texts that I'm talking about. So Ambedkar's impression was that India has remained a close-knit unit because there were powerful kings, but there was a class division in ancient history also. Shudra word has been used in Rig Veda. So he is against Vedas, right? Now he does not know when it was put in Rig Veda. Was Rig Veda composed all at once, or were there later translations and additions? There are almost 10 mandalas, but the first mandala is said to be a late addition. 2 to 9 is the original mandal. Mandal are the chapters of Rig Veda. Okay, so Ambedkar was not aware of Sanskrit. Okay, more so Vedic Sanskrit. So he read the translations and he came to this conclusion that India is a segmented community. The depressed classes have been forced to abide by certain rules. Second point, he supported Jinnah. Now there is this beautiful book by Ambedkar, Pakistan or the Partition of India. I have read that book so many times. You know what reasons he gives? He says, when the provincial elections happened, now listen very carefully. I told you there were provincial elections, Congress formed ministries. Why did Congress resign? Because Britishers participated in Second World War without consulting the Indians. Yaad aaya? I told you this a few minutes back. I'm drinking it like this. Okay, Sarath, I'll come to your question, but you remember they resigned because the Britishers went to the Second World War without even consulting, and Ambedkar was celebrating. Now, when the provincial elections happened, Jinnah's Muslim League got a fair percentage of votes, okay, in the Muslim majority constituencies. So Ambedkar is saying when there are people who are supporting Jinnah and his Muslim League, then why not better divide the country and let all the Muslims go there? And then he questions that all these people in current day Uttar Pradesh, that was United Province, Central Province, that was Madhya Pradesh at that time, in all these seats, Muslim League won. He has put all the exact election commission's data. He was a great economist also. He holds a PhD in economics from Columbia University. Okay. So he has given a very statistical analysis with correlation and regression that these people voted for Muslim League overwhelmingly and they are not going to Pakistan when the partition has happened. Why have they stayed here? So he was like, okay, when you are in favor of Jinnah, you are giving him so many seats. The vote percentage of Muslim League in Muslim majority constituencies is such high that Congress does not come even close. Then why not get a separate country? Go there. Got it? And then he also questions people who stayed here. Even Sardar Patel has said this. There is this famous speech by Sardar Patel on All India Radio Archives that they were favoring Jinnah. Then why have they not been there? Why are they staying here? Ambedkar and Patel have said these things. Got it? The second reason why he is in favor of Pakistan. You need to read that book someday. Pakistan or the Partition of India. Third point was he was a part of Viceroy's executive. See, again, I would send you something today. I would like all of you to listen to it. The BBC interview of Dr. Ambedkar about Gandhi. So here he would say that Gandhi is a hypocrite. Exact word. Okay. Did you listen? Have you already watched it? So whether he wants further fragmentation or not, again, that is open to interpretations. But he is saying that when people have made up their mind that they want to be under a religious theological country called Islamic Republic of Pakistan, there is no point for them to stay in India. Ambedkar refused to draft Article 370, telling Sheikh Abdullah, grandfather of Umar Abdullah, that you want that India will protect your borders, India will give you all the services, and then you will not be a part of India. I am not writing it. It was the Diwan, the same guy, what was his name? Kashmir Diwan, Maharaj ka Diwan, Iyengar, who wrote Article 370, okay, at behest of Nehruji. So Ambedkar would again say, I'll come to it. Let us not go by the conclusion. I'm just telling you why he's saying certain things. He's saying certain things. I'll come to the conclusion also. Being a part of Viceroy's executive council, because he's critical of Congress and Gandhi, he says Gandhi is a hypocrite. He writes something else in his English newspaper. Gandhi used to publish newspapers and magazines, a lot of them. I told you he was a very prolific writer. He wrote at length. 90 volumes have been published by Government of India itself. So he says in his English writings, he appears very liberal, very open-minded. But you read his Gujarati articles. There he is very conservative, very dogmatic, very, kind of parochial mindset he's showing. In English, he's writing very liberal. He's double-faced. But in Gujarati, with Hind Swaraj, there he is very dogmatic, very conservative, very parochial, very narrow-minded. And he just wants to use Dalits as a vote bank. Okay, he wants to use Dalit. Congress wants to use Dalit as vote bank. They do not favor the real empowerment of Dalits. Now you got answers to your questions. See, let us not get into the controversial areas because there is a lot more than what meets the eye. He says that Congress is not trying to empower Dalits, but they are just fooling the Dalits by using them as vote banks. Okay, Congress is not pro-Dalit, is what Ambedkar said. He criticized Quit India movement. Yes, he did not believe in it. He said that what is this? You launch a movement. Either you join the allies, take support from Japan and Hitler to rout them. Okay. So I wonder if you have heard his name. This guy. He keeps writing. He's professor of political science, HOD in Columbia University right now. Refer a lot. He writes for Indian Express also. And some of his articles we have to refer in our IGP part. Now he will call Shoury's views as absurd. He will say that Arun Shoury is having absurd views on Ambedkar. Okay. Written this, Christopher believes that Ambedkar represents BAHU, Bahujans. We are seeing the basis. Ambedkar represents Bahujans. Bahu means many, plural. The majority of India. Ambedkar represents Bahujans, the majority of India. And he's trying to integrate the Dalits. And the other depressed classes. Okay. On this basis. So he's saying he's representing the majority. So he wants to integrate them, the depressed classes, the minorities, all these kind of Shudras, laborers, poor marginalized farmers. So why are you calling him anti-national? He's saying. No, both of them are still floating around and they are still very active. Although Shauri has become less active with his favorite domains because he has turned against the government for the past 6 years. Okay. Else he was a pioneer of these things. He used to take on all the leftists single-handedly, almost 20, 25, 30 years. During his one prastha time, he has changed sides. So he will say, Jeffrey would say, Professor Jeffrey, Christopher Jeffrey would say that Ambedkar, Jyotiba Phule and Ambedkar, he finds a similarity. Write this line you can write. Ambedkar is unable to understand. Ambedkar is unable to understand how so many people divided on caste can be one country. Nationalism will be used by the Dalits, will be used by the elites. Nationalism will be used by the elites to counter any movement, to counter any Dalit movement. Although Ambedkar did not believe India as a nation, there was a desire within Ambedkar that India should emerge as a nation. There was a desire that India should emerge as a nation. Full stop. And next line you write. We should all address those issues. We should all address those issues which have stopped us from becoming a nation. Which have stopped us from becoming a nation. To quote, paragraph change कर लो. अभी तक सबने लिख लिया. You have written everything till now. Nothing missed as such. I wasn't going very fast, right? Which has stopped us from becoming a nation. We all should address those issues that have stopped us from becoming a nation. Aditya, is it okay? Now change the para and write. While addressing the Constituent Assembly in 1946, you all know Constituent Assembly was formed in November 1946, December 1946. So then he said these things. Ambedkar says, we are a group of warring camps. I am also leader of one such camp. He acknowledges it. But he says that I am convinced that a day will come when people will forget the difference, become one nation. Noted? Noted all of you? Next point you write, next topic. Criticism of Hinduism. I will answer the questions. First we are done with some writing. Then you need to know things. Only then maybe you will get your answer with it. See, right. Ambedkar is a critique of caste system. And he thinks it is not possible to end it. In his book, Annihilation of Caste. Liation, of Caste, Ambedkar writes that Hinduism is a myth. In his book, Annihilation of Caste, Ambedkar writes that Hinduism is a myth, Brahmanism is a reality. Hinduism is a myth, Brahmanism is a reality. Now, no need to be offended at all. Okay, we all have that maturity. He's saying that a religion that allows a poor to remain a poor because he cannot do things that his ancestors were doing. Apart from that, he cannot do any other thing. The Varna system. Okay. An illiterate would always remain illiterate because you are not fit to read the text. He says that by touching cow dung, you are not getting dirty, but by touching a Shudra, you are getting dirty. So, what kind of madness is this? He simply questions that what kind of madness is this? So, he says that Hinduism is the. You must be aware that the word Hindu is of foreign origin. The Greeks, when they came to India, the Indo-Greeks, they crossed the Indus River, which is in Hindi called Sindhu, or in Sanskrit called Sindhu. So people living on the other side of Sindhu River were Hindus, irrespective of their religious belief, whether they were a Hindu or a Jain or a Buddhist. At that time, only these three were there. So people living on the other side of Sindhu River were Hindus. So it has a geographical connotation rather than religious connotation. In due course of time, it became synonym for Sanatana Dharma. All right. Yes, it was a lot. It was a lot. Achita, yes, your answer to your question is yes. He's not exaggerating. Okay. He has suffered worst form of injustice. See, every human being has a limitation. Dr. Ambedkar also has a limitation. But if you empathize with the person, if the thinker, with the writer Ambedkar that he is, there's a reason he's saying these things. And still, see what he said in Constituent Assembly. He's not anti-India, but he wants his India to be free of social evils. Let untouchability go. Now, can any sane person justify untouchability the way it was practiced as a social evil? We cannot. There's a constitutional provision against that, Article 17. Correct. Next, you write, Ambedkar says that in Hinduism, inequality, it is not only in practice, but also in philosophy. Hindus will always be defeated. These are Ambedkar's words. Hindus will always be defeated because they cannot face the challenge of missionary religions. You know, the missionaries religion, he's talking about Abrahamic religions, the Islam and Christianity. That because you have created so much of inequality among yourself, you have not let a majority of your people to take to arms. Battle of Plassey, there were more onlookers than those fighting that war. Do you know this? There were more onlookers Indian onlookers than those who were fighting the war. So that is what he's saying, that you have created such a system that you will always be defeated, you will be losers. You cannot face the missionaries, the Abrahamic religions. They have a solid agenda, is what he's saying. He's saying that Hinduism is so divided, okay, that they cannot face the missionary religions, the Abrahamic religions. Okay, Ram? Next you write, Ambedkar does not believe in divine origin of caste. Ambedkar does not believe in divine origin of caste and criticizes the pure blood concept. It is this concept of pure blood. It was this concept of pure blood that has led to pollution in other aspects. Ambedkar says, yes, kind of pure means being born in upper caste, especially Brahmin. He says, what is the last line that you wrote? What was the last line that you wrote? Full stop, and then you write, he gave anthropological. He says, or he gave, anyone, anthropological. Anthropology, one of your optionals. ANTHROPOLOGICALLY. Anthropologically. He gives anthropological explanation about the Shudras and untouchables. And he says that Shudras originally were Kshatriyas. But they did not accept, the hegemony of Brahmins. Like these Shudras who originally were Kshatriyas, they did not accept the hegemony of Brahmins. And that's why the Brahmins stopped. I'm writing it here on the top. The Upanayan Sanskar for them. You know what is Upanayan Sanskar? That is Janevu. It is like when you go to take your formal education. Sacred thread is Janevu, right? So they stopped Upanayan Sanskar for them, and therefore they remained impure. The purpose of the purpose of untouchability is to keep the untouchables oppressed. Ambedkar also opposed Gandhi calling the untouchables as Harijan, as it is a misleading term, as it does not tell the reality of Shudras, Reality is that they are very, very depressed people. They are not Harijans. Harijan means God-owned people. So he's trying to destigmatize, but this term is misleading. Okay, that's what he will say. Ambedkar prefers Dalit, and he even criticized Harijan Sevak San formed by Gandhi. There was this institution which Gandhiji claimed that I have made for the benefit of the depressed class whom he affectionately called Harijans. Today, if you say Harijan to anyone let me assure you, it's a non-bailable offense. Okay, so Harijan is not to be used in public discourse. This term. Gandhi formed this Harijan Sevak Sangh, and no, Dalit can be used. Dalit is the acceptable term. Any casteist remark is not to be used. Because Ambedkar was very critical of this term, that there is nothing called Harijan here. It's a misleading term. He would say that it does not tell the reality of the depressed class. Depressed classes are, the untouchables are mostly depressed people, and they have been wronged for a long time. So just by an appropriation of term, you cannot do away with everything that has been done to them. Yeah, SC/ST is of course constitutional term. You cannot do anything about that. It's a constitutional term, so no one can object to that. Dalit is also acceptable. But then why refer to a person by his caste? I do not understand. This Hindu newspaper always prints the Dalit scholar. I am like, uska koi naam hai? What is this Dalit scholar idiocy? They keep say Dalit scholar so and so, Dalit leader. Bhai, the person has a name, and what makes one a Dalit scholar? I always get confused. That by being born as a Dalit, you become, and you do a lot of study, you become a Dalit scholar, or even a general person who researches on Dalit will become a Dalit scholar. Who is a Dalit scholar? Attest the person by his name. Why enhance? Why always highlight his caste identity? These are the things that keep us back to square one. Why is caste so important? And when you assert caste identity, the other side will also do the same. So when there will be a Dalit scholar, there has to be a Brahmin scholar. There has to be a Kshatriya scholar. So this narrative war will lead us nowhere. Are you understanding this? And it mostly comes from very well-educated urban elites who do these kinds of terminologies. The liberals who call themselves liberal. That's why you all study well, get into services, and do things as it should be done. Imagine the image of a district collector I just saw a few days back during Corona, when Corona was initially coming. There is this old lady who is selling something, and because it's a lockdown, no one is coming to buy. The district collector comes, he sits on the floor where she's having her tokri and says, "Amma, give it to me, I'll purchase everything." These are the kind of public servants that we need. You just, what would have been, was he needing all those stuff that she was selling? I don't think so. But this small act, maybe 1,000 or 2,000 rupees, which really does not matter to a district collector, but that would have made the day of that old lady. Sits on the floor, talks to her, assures us that don't worry, we are here. We'll provide you with everything. Administration and government is with you. This is the healing touch that is needed for the vulnerable. This is the healing touch that is to be provided by the state to the vulnerable. Not that because you are now about to become empowered, so you should do things that should shame any civilized society. Okay, then you will start calling names to others, saying that for thousands of years we have been facing this. So does that relate to the fact or equate to the fact that now you will do the same thing to the others? These are the dilemmas, the idiotic dilemmas of our times, and I have good hopes from your generation, that when you will be there on the positions, at least you will not engage into such acts or let such acts happen in front of yourself, right? Okay, I'm stopping it here for today. Small bit remains, half an hour discussion remains on Ambedkar, and then we'll come to the next thinker. Okay, I think two of them are left, Aurobindo and M.N. Roy are left. Only these two are left. So we'll see them very soon.